Here I've got a Retina Reflex S camera. This could just as easily be a Retina IIIS or IIS with the typical cracked meter window at the top here. Now sometimes that plastic's just given up with age, sometimes it's because people have shoved their big fat fingers through it and broken it up, and other times it gets damaged because the camera's been dropped and this piece at the top has been pushed out of shape subtly, which creates a lot of stress on that plastic and causes it to fail even quicker. But the plastic is not robust. It's probably styrene, might be acrylic, but whatever it is, it doesn't stand up to usage over time. And you may even have a camera that's missing the window and its button completely. So I'll show you how to replace that broken window. Well, to start here I want to remove the rewind knob. So I'll just place something through the fork of the rewind, and then the rewind knob just unscrews with your fingers. Very easy. Take that off. I'll lift off that black spacer at the same time. There are two screws under the rewind knob. I'll get those out. And this is the same procedure if you're doing a Retina IIIS camera. There's one screw at the end of the top plate here. That only leaves us this one to deal with. Now I've got various tools to deal with that, including these screwdriver tips that I dealt with sometime fairly recently. Let's use that. Usually that screw's not over tight, but if you use tweezers or something on it, your danger of slipping is very high. You'll end up scarring something. Right, top cover off. Be careful not to disturb the meter, because it's very easy to lift it up, losing your tension off the cord, in which case the meter is then going to be very crippled until you open up the entire camera and put the cord all back around the pulleys where it came from. Let's put the camera body to one side. And here's our top cover. I'll see if I can zoom you in a little bit. You can clearly see how damaged that window is there. And we want that out, and we want to replace it. So to get it out, boom, gone, that's history. There you go, there's our broken plastic window. Now to prepare this to replace the window, if you look in there, you can see quite clearly where it's been crimped in place in these positions here. And we need to roll back or push back those little crimps on that thin edge of metal so that we can put the new window in place. So the tool for the job is a table knife, nice blunt one. Steal it out of the cutlery drawer, don't tell your wife. And the procedure is this. Now, supporting this top at all times with your finger, slide this underneath. I'll zoom you in a bit so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Slide this in underneath and use the tip of that knife, and you just sort of slide it backwards and forwards over that crimped piece with a bit of extra force until you roll that edge back up. Now at all times support this piece carefully with your finger, because if you just push, this can pop completely off the top plate, and it is no fun to try and get it back in place. And you've just got to work around it until each of those little indentations, those crimps, are pushed back upright again. You may pop out this little window while you're doing it. Put it carefully to one side. And when you've worked your way around all of them, you'll be ready to put the new window in place. Now you may have a new old stock window to replace it with. They do still exist. Finding them can be tricky. Or you may have to make a replacement window out of some suitable plastic. I think I want one more of these done and then I'll be there. I'll bring you back when I've got that done. Okay, well I've got all those little crimps pushed back out of place. Here's my replacement window. This is polycarbonate actually, Lectra. That should just fit in there neatly. And I'll just find my block of wood to press that down against. Right, now I've got this sitting on a block of wood. That window should just press in there with a bit of luck. I can see that this top is not exactly round. I suspected as much because the window was bowed up, which is a sign that things were not sitting flush. Let's see if I can get this to seat in here. Yes, that's seated. And now I just need to form some crimps around the edge to hold that in place. And to do that, just use a screwdriver. Pop it into that gap, give it a twist. and create a series of crimps around the edge. And they'll hold the window in place. Well, that's our replacement window all in position, and I've just got to put this meter needle window back in place. Normally with these meter needle windows, if they fit in easily, because they don't always, I would put a little drop of adhesive in the far corners on the inside of the top cover, and then just put them in position. And if they're a bit of a fight to get in, I'd put no glue there at all. I'd push that into position, and then I would apply a little drop of adhesive to the outside edge on either side once it was in position. And while the adhesive was there, I wouldn't touch anything at all. I certainly wouldn't try and wipe fingerprints and things away from there while adhesive was present, because there's always a danger you'll pick it up on the cotton bud or Q-tip and wipe it over the plastic. But anyway, I'll put a couple of spots of adhesive on here. Our window's in place, and that can go back on the camera. I'll show you that in a second. Right, with our spring and button sitting in position, I'll fit my top cover. Check that everything's seated. And get my fasteners back in place. Now normally I'd put this one in place first, but I spin it down with my fingers. I certainly don't tighten it all the way up. We have our two here at the end of the top plate. These are chromed brass. They're easily damaged, so take a great deal of care and attention to make sure that you don't make a mess of them. And we have one at the end of the top cover. And those three screws in. Tighten this one. Put that spacer back on there. Put something through the fork of the rewind to stop it spinning. Put on our rewind knob. And there we have it, all sorted out. Nice new window on the meter, nice and clear, and most importantly, not a cracked mess like this one. So that's how you replace the window on the top of the meter dial on a Retina Reflex S, Retina IIIS rangefinder camera, or Retina IIS rangefinder camera. And I suppose you'd like to see how I make my own replacement discs or windows. We'll do that too. Alright, back out in the shed again today. So, what do we need to do? Well, what we're trying to achieve here is make replacement discs for the meter window on a Retina IIIS or Retina Reflex S camera or a Retina IIS camera. And here I have an original replacement part, and this one has got cracking all around the middle, just like all the good ones do. We need to effectively copy this. Let's get some dimensions. So our outside dimension, our OD, is 19.7 millimeters. Let's get the inside. Somewhere around 6.25 or thereabouts by the looks of that, 6.3. So somewhere, we'll say that the ID is 6.3 millimeters. And the thickness here .61 millimeters. Now this material, it's either acrylic, it's vaguely possible it's something like styrene. We know it's relatively brittle because they all tend to be cracked, and we need to make a new one anyway. Now the outside edge here at the top, it's got a bevel on the top surface. That's so that it'll sit neatly in here and the plastic comes up fairly high inside that rim. So we need to put a bevel on that edge if at all possible. Okay, so far so good. Now let's gather some materials. So here I have some Lexan sheet, polycarbonate. This is 0.7 millimeters thick, so it's slightly thicker. It's incredibly hard to break this stuff, so there's no danger that that's going to break on us if we make replacements. And we need a process in order to make these parts so that they'll come out reliably good. I've already made, as you can see from this sheet, I've run 2 batches through here at various times, and this was the second batch I did, and the results were good. They were better than my first batch, mostly because I took greater care with quality control, you could say. So what do we need to do? Well, the system I use is I start with my sheet, I mark where I'm going to make my discs from, and then I drill a centre hole in each case and I work from there, and I'll show you how I do that. But drilling plastic sheet is a lot like drilling sheet metal. It's even worse. If you use a normal twist bit drill like this, you'll find that you end up with a hole in the middle which isn't exactly circular, and it isn't exactly tidy, and it's probably not on size. And plastic in particular, as the drill breaks through, the sheet tends to grab and pull up, and then you end up with an egg-shaped hole. So the drill bit's not ideal. So what we need to do is get a drill bit that's going to work better for us. And what I do for that is I make a drill bit much like you would use like a dowel point drill. So we've got our drill bit, and instead of having an angle like that on the top, a dowel point drill works like this. So you have a slightly longer point right in the centre, and you grind away the flutes here to leave two little spikes on the outside edge. And what that does, as you drill it, they'll cut through the material and you end up with a nice neat circular hole, and it works really well. Of course, I don't have a dowel point drill the right size. This is not 6.3mm because I don't have a 6.3mm drill. This is a 1/4 inch, which is basically 6.35mm, which is certainly is close enough for our purposes. I can warn you now that if you measure the little chrome button, I think it measures about 6mm in diameter, and if you drill a nice neat 6mm diameter hole, you'll find that the button tends to stick. So you need a little bit of clearance there. So a 1/4 inch, 6.35mm, that works really well for me. I've got to grind the tip of that so that it'll work, so that it's shaped like a dowel bit. That's the next thing to do. Okay, well here's my bench grinder, and I'm going to attempt to modify this drill bit. I won't bother putting any sound through this part because you won't like the sounds it makes. Just imagine there's soft music playing in the background, all along the watchtower or something like that. Well, wasn't that fun? The whole section where I recorded me carefully grinding that drill bit failed to record. Card error, the camera told me. So you never got to see any of that. But that drill bit shall do the job. I suppose you got to avoid the noise of the grinder at the same time. And we can move on to drilling the plastic sheet now. I'll just pack this stuff away. Ooh, here's our sheet of plastic, and I think I'll just make a couple of these. That's probably enough for demonstration purposes. So we'll put the centre of one there and the centre of one there. I'll smooth that over a bit. And two should be enough. I think you always get losses in production. You always need to make more than you finally require, and if the more stages you have in production, the more pieces you need at the beginning of the chain to make allowance for any errors that crop up through the chain of processes. But that will make two. I'm confident. Here we go. I've got a piece of wood under here. It's so long that it can't spin round. It's held by the post at the back. And I've had a trial run because I hadn't turned on the video camera. But our dowel point drill, or similar, cuts nice clean circular holes in that thin plastic. Well, here's the wad punch, and here's the little insert I've made in it. It helps keep everything centred up on that plastic sheet. So where's our sheet? Here we have it. So I'll pop that little insert through there, pop that over the top, block your ears. We have one plastic disc. Now I'll do the same again. Now the reason I use that shim around here and pre-drilled holes rather than just relying on the wad punch to find its own centre is that it won't find its own centre accurately enough. Right, block your ears. We have another one. We have our two plastic discs, nice neat holes drilled in the centre, and they're almost ready to use. Okay, so we've got our discs, 19.82 millimetres, 19.83, so pretty much identical, 6.44 through the centre it tells me, 6.39, so about 6.4 diameter holes in the middle. That's close enough, and for my lousy drill bit grinding that's probably very good. So now these discs are pretty much ready to go, except in an ideal world I'd want to reduce the diameter down slightly. What did I say we had? 19.88. We really want to reduce that down to 19.7. So there's a couple of ways we can deal with that, and one of them is utilising the drill press again. So we'll have a look at that. Right, to turn these down, we're just reducing the diameter by a tiny amount. What I would normally do, if I was making a batch of them, which I have previously, I made a little arbor. So the disc sat on there neatly, and then the cap came down over that. You tighten that up, mount that in the drill press, or in the case when I've been making a batch of these I mounted them in my tiny modeller's lathe, and there you have it. But if I didn't have a lathe handy, and if I didn't want to go to the trouble of making an arbor, you could do this in the drill press, and you'd do it like this. So basically, let's put that arbor to one side. Here I've got a quarter UNC screw, and what I would do is put a washer on there. Now washers are usually punched out of strip, so they have a sharp edge on one face and a round edge on the other. We want the round edges to the plastic. We put the plastic on there like that. Watch that washer, same thing. You want the rounded edge to the plastic. We'll spin that nut on there. And what I'll do is I will pretend that the lathe, the drill press, can be the lathe for the day. Let's tighten that screw up a little bit. We'll mount that in the drill chuck, find a nice sharp file, we'll get it spinning at a decent speed, and then we'll just run the file gently across that edge to reduce the outside diameter from 19.8 down to 19.7. Easy. Let's have a go at this. Now plastic probably moves fairly quickly, so we probably don't need to do much. .84. .79. 19.73. .72, we're just about there. .62 there. Can't be round. 19.74. 19.65, so it's not round, it's close enough. Right, one of the other things we wanted to achieve was have a bevel on the edge. We'll see if we can do the same thing here. Okay, let's see what we've got. Let's have that out. Back to the bench. We'll try that, see if it fits the camera. Okay, let's see what we've got here. I'll peel this cover sheet off the top, both sides. Yeah, we've got a nice clean disc. Top edge is beveled. See if that'll sit into place. It does. So there it is, all ready to be crimped in place. A nice neat job done with a fairly minimal amount of equipment and in a fairly minimum amount of time, and that will make a more than adequate replacement. It's better than the original because it's polycarbonate, not acrylic. It's not going to crack, and it gets this camera back working again as it should.